So, fun week. In this video, I'm going to be addressing the comment made by Rollo Tomassi in my last video. Before we get to that, let's address a couple of points. If you're not aware of my last video and the reaction that it got, you might want to go watch that first so that you're aware of what I'm talking about. Evidently, some things that I said in that video could be interpreted as if I was saying that men should only be improving themselves for the benefit of women. I'll clarify here that you should live life for your own satisfaction, not for the validation of anybody else, man or woman. I won't spend a huge amount of time on this topic because I've already made my thoughts on this issue abundantly clear in my previous work. In my book and in my videos, you will have heard me talk extensively about Ayn Rand and the philosophy of objectivism, which I love precisely because it promotes the rights of the individual to live for their own happiness and not for the sake of anybody else. Way back in 2007, 2008, I had a YouTube channel called Stop and Look, which explored explicitly the rights of the individual and the political theory of individualism. And in my other channel, Animation Philosophy, I did a video called What Would You Sacrifice for Approval?, where the explicit message of it was how dangerous it is to live for the approval and validation of others. If you want to check out that stuff, I'll post links down below. So in this case, the criticism is a straw man. The idea that you should live for the benefit of a woman and a woman's approval is not an idea that I have ever had, or am likely to have in the future. The other major criticism that I got was that I was in some way trying to dilute, distort, or change the meaning of the red pill. Judging from the comments, I think it was this part that got people most angry. Had I been some random person, probably nobody would have cared, but because I was attempting to label myself as red pill and sort of put my own spin on what that means, that's what got people really upset. So before I go any further, I'll just say right here that I'm dropping red pill as any label that refers to myself. I'm not a red-pilled person, and I don't have any authority to speak about what it means to be red-pilled. I will take the time, however, to explain how this confusion arose, because the issue of how to label yourself on this sort of pill spectrum is reasonably complex, and I doubt I'll be the last person affected by this issue. Way back in June, I released a video called Where My Beliefs Sit in the Red Pill Spectrum, and the thumbnail text read, Am I MGTOW? In that video, I say the exact same things that I said in my last video, that I'm not MGTOW and that I identify as a red pill moderate. Even in that video, I made it explicitly clear that men need to find a purpose, meaning, and satisfaction in their lives that comes from within, that isn't dependent on some external validation from women. Incidentally, that video was extremely popular. It had 969 likes and only 31 dislikes, even though it contained the same information that my latest video did, which has been heavily disliked. It's understandable though, because that video was probably only seen by my subscribers, the audience that's familiar with my work, whereas the latest video sort of leached out into the wider community. That's an important thing to realize though, because it helps explain how I made this error of judgment. Over time, I've got a pretty good sense of where my audience is at and what they believe, and I sense that they would appreciate me looking at red pill ideas that I considered extreme and debunking them. However, I did not have a good sense on how the wider red pill community would react to this. In that sense, my judgment was way off. And like I said in my previous video, if it turns out that there's no real place in the community for someone who's like a red pill moderate or the sort of beliefs that I have, it's fine, I'll just distance myself from the label, which I'm now going to do. This is all a big surprise though, because my plan was initially to release like 10 or so videos with specific debunking of ideas that I've seen that are extreme, that are called red pill. After that, when I'd explained my points and heard from people's responses, I thought I'd get a pretty good sense of where the community was at on these issues, and it would give me some perspective as to whether or not the red pill label would accurately reflect my beliefs. I did not imagine that I would get so much feedback and such clarity within such a short period of time. I haven't even released any of my debunking videos yet, which explore specific ideas and rhetoric in depth, which I still intend on doing. All I did was announce my intention to examine these ideas, and already the backlash occurred. And I don't mean the obvious trolling comments that are all emotional and use identical language. I mean people who are like, they're not leaders, because I don't think the community really has leaders, but they're like role models for people who want to become red-pilled. Both Rollo Tomassi from The Rational Male and Richard Cooper from Entrepreneurs in Cars both made it clear publicly that I am not red-pilled. Now, I can disagree with them if I want to, but honestly, when it comes to determining what beliefs do or do not fit the label red pill, I think that they have a lot more authority on the subject than I do. But the situation isn't simple. The discussion around what labels are appropriate and to who is quite complex. For example, when I released that video 6 months ago announcing that I'm not MGTOW, I had a lot of people in the comment section disagree with me and tell me that my definition of MGTOW was wrong and that in actual fact I was a MGTOW. Now for me, whenever I've used the term red pill, I've used it in reference specifically to the Red Pill subreddit. That's where I first heard of all of these ideas, and that's where I've spent the majority of my time learning and understanding the philosophy. That subreddit has an explicit focus on sexual strategy, and it has always seemed to me that they blended Red Pill knowledge with discussions about how to apply that knowledge in practical real-life situations of dating and relationships. Most of my favorite posts from the Red Pill subreddit are from guys discussing how they've seen Red Pill principles play out in real-life interactions, or field reports from guys who are experimenting with Red Pill ideas in their dating lives. However, as you'll see in the comment section of my last video, there are a bunch of comments from people saying that basically, if you're trying to still date and have relationships with women, then you're not Red Pilled. Now, like I said, I'm not in any position to say who's correct or not. I'm just pointing out that this issue of what's Red Pill and what isn't is quite complex. It seems clear now that my perspective definitely doesn't fit the label, but I don't think this will be the last that you hear of the issue. I think there's going to be many more discussions in the future about what is and isn't Red Pill and who has the authority to say so. Now, back to Rollo and Richard. Obviously, they're no fans of my work, but I'm not going to pretend that the feeling is mutual. I've enjoyed their work. The Rational Male was awesome. That book is so good. I've recommended it to a bunch of men, and I'm going to continue recommending it in the future. The same goes for Richard's channel. I think that a lot of his videos are great. My favorite one is the one where he examines the female shaming tactics that he's been exposed to, and he just cuts through the crap so well. Awesome video. So yeah, two guys whose work I've definitely admired in the past, but if they and a bunch of other people don't want the Red Pill label to apply to me and my beliefs, that's absolutely fine. I'm happy to let it go. I'm not sad about this because this situation has given me clarity. Because if the Red Pill community is not a place where you're allowed to challenge and question the orthodoxy, then I don't want to be a part of it anyway. I will put an open question to Rollo and Richard and any other YouTuber who wants to answer. Is it possible for Red Pill ideas to go too far? Just, is it possible? Can Red Pill ideas become too extreme? If it is possible, is it okay for people to discuss where that line should be drawn? Where do you personally draw the line? When do you think that Red Pill ideas become too extreme? And if we disagree, is it okay for us to have a rational and civil debate? People who watch this channel know that I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan, and you'll probably recognize this question as a variation on the question that Jordan Peterson asked during the Monk debate, the one he did with Stephen Fry, Michelle Goldberg, and Michael Eric Dyson. In that debate, he asked the opposition to define when the left goes too far. He points out that we're already well aware of when the right goes too far, people like Nazis and people who believe in racial superiority, things of that nature. But there's no discussion about when the left goes too far. I feel like the Red Pill community is in the same position. There's lots of clarity about when feminism goes too far, when that becomes too extreme, but there's little to no discussion and certainly no clarity on when Red Pill ideas become too extreme. Okay, so let's get to Rollo's comment specifically. Before I start, I do want to acknowledge that on Monday, I did send an email out to Rollo and invited him to discuss all of this stuff privately with me if he so wanted. I felt like it was the respectful thing to do since I was going to be addressing his comment publicly in a video. That way, I could make sure that I wasn't taking him out of context, misinterpreting his words or his intentions, and giving him a chance to clarify if he wanted. I didn't hear back from him, which could have been for any number of reasons. It's very possible that he doesn't like me and he has no interest in discussing anything with me, but he might also just be too busy to respond or didn't see it. I don't read anything into it. I mean, it's Rollo Tomassi. The guy probably gets heaps of emails every single day. You can't respond to them all. Anyway, so let's look at his comments. The only reason you came out with this video is because YouTube demonetized your content. Add one more purple pill hack to the list of life coaches. Stop trying to sanitize the parts of Red Pill awareness you know women will lose their shit over. You're not Red Pill, you're a Vichy male sellout, and there are a lot of you. This isn't novel. Real social dynamics and a lot of other hacks do the exact same thing. It's not about anger, it's about truth. And that truth is something that conflicts with your profit model. Okay, so let's break this down step by step. We'll start with the name calling. A hack and a Vichy male. There's some of the nicer things that I was called in the comment section. Yeah, honestly, that's not too bad. I understand why Rollo's upset. He's spent a significant portion of his life building the Red Pill community and philosophy, and there's going to be a big emotional investment in that. If he perceives a threat in the form of people coming along and trying to shift or change the label and what it means, well, understandably, that's going to trigger some anger. Two of my biggest idols in history went through the exact same thing. Both Ayn Rand and Maria Montessori faced people who tried to water down and change their philosophies and their ideas, and understandably, it angered them both. Ayn Rand even went so far as to insist that people who are interested in her philosophy not call themselves objectivists, but instead students of objectivism. So this threat is real. People are constantly trying to change the meanings behind words, And for Rollo and anybody else who's interested in preserving the integrity of what it means to be red-pilled, you have my compassion because there's an uphill battle in front of you. The meaning of words and labels shift and change constantly. And if you're fighting to try and hold on to your specific definition of a word, then that's going to be a difficult task. This was my feeling, that the reality-based self-improvement sort of philosophy that I learned about on the Red Pill subreddit was shifting to become something that endorsed tribalism. I'm lucky enough to be dropping the Red Pill label and just completely bowing out of this issue. But for you, I think that the worst of your struggles are still yet to come. Anyway, I think that Rollo's comment helps demonstrate a key difference between his perspective and mine, which can be summed up like this. My first priority is to help men. I suspect that Rollo's first priority is to help the red pill ideology. Rollo definitely wants to help men as well, and luckily for him, those two interests are not mutually exclusive. By promoting the red pill ideology, it helps men and inspires them to improve their lives. That was my perspective. I was happy to promote red pill ideas because they seemed accurate to me and a great way of helping men. But in those situations where the red pill ideas were becoming extreme, and I was confident that men who believed in those ideas would ultimately do themselves more harm than good, then my first priority of helping men won out over any loyalty I felt to the ideology. My interest is in helping men, in helping individuals, and I'm only interested in the ideology to the extent that it helps me further that aim. Now, I may be wrong about Rollo, I certainly don't know what's in his head, and I'm happy to be corrected. And I would hope that, say, if in 5 years' time, the red pill ideology is completely unrecognizable from what it is now, that the ideas have become really extreme and they're obviously no longer serving men's interests, that he too would distance himself from the label. That's all speculation though, only time will tell. Now, let's talk about that part of the comment where he claims to know what my motives are. He insinuates that the reason that I want to discuss when red pill ideas can become too extreme is because there are aspects of the ideology that will make women uncomfortable and that I want to sanitize it so that I don't lose female validation. I'm guessing that he's encountered this a number of times. Men who are too afraid to actually acknowledge the reality of gender dynamics, and so they back off from the more intense parts of the ideology because they're scared of losing female approval. Having seen it a number of times over the years, he is probably psychologically predisposed to interpreting situations through that lens. However, in this instance, he's incorrect because my motive is not to seek female validation. Just to restate what I said in my previous video, my intention is to debunk extreme ideas because I believe that those ideas will do the men who believe in them more harm than good. That is my motivation, to help men. Now, whenever somebody claims to know what your intentions are, they claim to know your motives, that's a big red flag. Think of the Kathy Newman interview with Jordan Peterson, where she claimed to know what his motives were. She would ignore the actual content of his speech because she assumed that she knew better than he did what his motives were. It's the "so what you're saying" technique. If you ever start to date a girl who claims to know what your motives are, that's a big red flag. Run the other way, do not get involved with her because she's not in touch with reality. One of my favorite authors who I highly recommend is Patricia Evans, who writes books about people with personality disorders and abuse. If you're interested in this subject, you should definitely check out her work, particularly the book Controlling People, because it explains perfectly why claiming to know what somebody's motives are is a technique of abuse. Now, obviously this comment from Rollo isn't abuse, but it is worrying that he ignores my stated intentions and claims to know what my motives are. It's a very strange thing to do until you understand the purpose behind it, because there is a very specific reason for this mischaracterization. What it does is it assigns me an undesirable motive. And when you've got an undesirable motive, the content of your arguments can be safely ignored because people don't agree with the ends that you're trying to achieve. I haven't even released any videos yet debunking specific ideas, but evidently, the mere suggestion that we could have that discussion was enough to warrant a full-on smear campaign. It's a preemptive strike. If you can convince everybody that my intention is not to help men, but to appease women and lead men back onto the plantation, then everything that I say can be safely ignored because, well, look how terrible my motive for doing this is. Unfortunately for them, that's not reality. My intention is to help men. Now, I may be wrong about what is best for men and how best to help them, and there's room for discussion and debate. It's like, I want to help men. You want to help men. And we have disagreements over the best way to do that. That's okay. Let's talk and discuss about the merits of both approaches. Have a marketplace of ideas. I'm confident that the best idea will win out. That would be the rational response to somebody disagreeing with you. Instead, we got, "You don't acknowledge that I'm 100% correct in the best way to help men?" It couldn't be that you have good intentions, but you're just mistaken about some things, or there's something that you've overlooked. Or, God forbid, there's something that I've potentially overlooked. The only explanation is that you're a Vichy male, a traitor to your gender. To begin the process with fabrications about what my motive is reveals how fragile they must feel. If people's ideas are really based off reality, like what's true, what's facts, what's demonstrable, then what harm would a little bit of scrutiny do? What is so threatening about what I'm intending to do here? It will be interesting to see going forward if people have the courage to accept that my motive is to help men and just acknowledge that we have a difference in opinion on the best way to achieve that. Or will we continue to see emotional name-calling, misrepresenting my points, and fabricating my motives? Only time will tell. I'll just point out again that I haven't actually begun the process of debunking specific points that I consider extreme. All of this is just because I wanted to start that conversation. Having already assumed that they know what I'm going to talk about and slammed me, I wonder how these critics will respond if they listen to the points that I actually make and they agree with me. As with most things, I would advise that the wisest course of action is to wait and see. If you're too confident in your assumptions, you might end up looking like a fool. Now, the other motive that Rollo assigns to me is financial, saying that I came out with this video in order to be more profitable. This was a common criticism from lots and lots of people, and it was a little difficult to understand because it's not entirely consistent. Like in his comment, Rollo calls me a purple pill hack. Others called me a simp or a male feminist or some other generic insult. So do people think that my real beliefs are red-pilled, but that I'm pretending that they're not so that I can be more profitable in the channel? Or do they think that I've always been some male feminist and that I was being deceptive in the past in order to make money? It's unclear, but like I said earlier, there's no deception here. I made my views on these topics extremely clear 6 months ago. If you go back and watch that video from 6 months ago on where my beliefs sit in the red pill spectrum, you'll see that there's been complete consistency. My views have not changed and I've never hidden them. So the argument that I'm changing my beliefs for some profit motive is another straw man. It doesn't reflect reality. That said, it was really strange to see so many people attack me on those particular grounds, because typically I found people in the red pill community to be very pro-capitalism. When Ben Shapiro was interviewed with Jordan Peterson on Dave Rubin's channel, he gave his guide for what's the best course of action to take in life. He said that you want to find something that you enjoy, something that you're good at, something that helps other people, and ideally makes you money. This sums up my approach as well. I want to do something that I love, like this YouTube channel, and I want it to make me money. This isn't some sneaky agenda that I've tried to keep hidden. I explicitly ask people for money at the end of every video. I ask them to donate to my Patreon. There's no hidden agenda, there's no smoking gun. In case it still isn't clear for people, I'll state it explicitly. I like money. I want to make money. I want to use this channel to make money. I will also add that this channel is pretty small. I don't make a lot of money. You can check out Social Blade if you want to find the specifics. But I live very frugally, have a very simple lifestyle, and it works fine for me. Now, I suppose that the concern is that if somebody is guided by a profit motive, then you have reason to suspect that their integrity might not be intact because they might compromise their views in order to make more money. That is a legitimate concern, and it's one of the reasons why I so dislike lobbyists. They're poisonous to our political system. Now, I assure you, I will never change my beliefs just to be more profitable. There'll be people who say that I'm lying and I can't offer you any proof whatsoever, but I absolutely assure you, what you're seeing on this channel is an accurate depiction of my beliefs. For me, making money is less of a priority than keeping my integrity, and if the two ever were to conflict, my integrity would always win out. That's not me being holier than thou or virtue signaling. That is entirely selfish and practical. Having integrity is what makes life bearable. I'm the one who has to live with myself, and I want my internal experience to be peaceful. I want to be at peace with my own conscience and not have any dark pockets of energy where I refuse to look. That's my entirely selfish and practical approach to integrity, because I know that I would be much happier being broke and authentic than rich and some dishonest liar. For the people who focus on the money aspect of this thing, I think that it gives a pretty good insight into the way that they think. It's an obvious projection, and clearly money is at the forefront of their mind. The same goes for Richard's comment when he says that I'm going to lose a large part of my audience. I've been trying and trying to guess what his reason was for saying that. Is he being charitable? Is he concerned for the well-being of my channel and wants me to hold back on my perspective so that I don't lose subscribers? Is he trying to scare me by pointing out the consequences of not towing the line and trying to frighten me so that I don't pursue this debunking extreme ideas thing I'm doing? Or is it just more projection? is maintaining subscribers at the forefront of his mind. And so when he saw my video, that was the first thing that he thought of. I don't know the answers to these questions. I can't figure it out. So it's just speculation. But I'll extend to you, Richard, the same invitation that I extended to Rollo. If you want to have a discussion with me about these issues, I'd be more than happy to have that conversation. Like I said before, I've been a big fan of both of you, and I really hope to see a lot of courage and integrity moving forward so that I can continue being a fan. In that spirit, I'll ask again this open question that I put to Rollo, Richard, or any other Red Pill YouTuber that wants to weigh in. Is it possible for Red Pill ideas to go too far? Is it possible for the Red Pill ideology to ever go too extreme? If it is possible, is it okay for people to discuss where that line should be drawn? Where do you personally draw that line? And if we disagree, is it okay for us to have a rational and civil debate? One thing that I'll be curious to see is if Red Pill YouTubers will be brave enough to ask this question and risk alienating the really hardcore elements of their fan base. So yes, I lost a bunch of subscribers, but like I said, my integrity comes first. And when I saw extreme ideas being labeled as Red Pill, and I sensed that they were doing harm to the men who believed them, it felt incumbent on me to debunk them. I knew people would leave. I explicitly called for them to unsubscribe. I said, I'll politely ask you to move on to another channel. I don't think that you're going to find content here that appeals to your perspective. Now, let's talk about Rollo attacking real social dynamics. I have spoken to somebody who has first-hand knowledge on the ongoing beef that Rollo has with that company, but I don't really think it's my place to talk about that. What I will say is that Rollo's antagonism towards real social dynamics does a really good job of demonstrating the different perspectives held by those who consider themselves red-pilled. I've been told that the real social dynamics instructors encourage their students to read books like The Rational Male. They want to expose them to red pill ideas. The antagonism comes because even though the diagnosis is the same, Rollo and real social dynamics offer very different cures. For the RSD guys, the cure that they recommend is to develop game, to really improve your skills with women, to use that red pill knowledge to create the life that you want with an abundance of women. Now, I have some disagreements with some of the stuff taught by real social dynamics. Some of them are significant, but I don't doubt for a second that Tyler is motivated by a genuine desire to help men. But because they disagree about what to do with red pill knowledge, they're dismissed as hacks, and that's really disappointing. There's no tolerance for a difference of opinion, just more tribalism. Let's not focus on the huge amount that we have in common. Let's divide ourselves based on what we disagree on. If you're not with us, then you're against us. If you don't agree with me, then you're my enemy. This leads perfectly into one of my final points, which is explaining why there was such a significant backlash to my last video. Initially, I wasn't aware of this, I now am, but evidently a lot of red pill YouTubers have been telling people for a while that at some point, feminist infiltrators were going to try and come into the red pill movement and return men by stealth back to the plantation. I will do a video at some point that explains the psychological appeal of this kind of conspiracy mindset and paranoia. But suffice to say, a lot of these guys were waiting for something to come along to justify this narrative. So, when my video came out explaining my intention to debunk ideas that I considered extreme, they jumped on it. Aha! Got him! We caught you, you wolf in sheep's clothing. We know that you're not some regular guy with good intentions and a difference of opinion. No. We know that you're a feminist infiltrator. You're a Vichy male, and you've been pretending to be red-pilled all this time just so you could gain our trust and then lead us back to the plantation. Some people thought that we were paranoid, but here's the proof. Look at this guy. He was sent to destroy us. It's a good story, except that it's not true. It doesn't reflect reality. It's just another straw man. So, if I had to predict how things will go from here, I would imagine that it's going to be a lot more of the same. You've got your shaming tactics, your emotional name calling, your misrepresenting my points, fabricating motives, things like that. It's not new, it's how every Twitter outrage mob behaves, including the radical feminists. Once I get to the specific debunking of points, I imagine that we'll see a lot more whataboutery, diverting from the points I've made and constantly changing the subject. I hope that I'm wrong. Only time will tell. So, that's it. I apologize for this long video. I had a lot to say. I know that I still haven't got to the actual point of debunking specific arguments that I consider extreme, and I will get to that. I just felt like I needed to first address the backlash that occurred against the very idea of debunking extremist points. I guess, in a way, this video was me debunking the idea that there's no room in the red pill community for a conversation about when the ideology goes too far. Even though I won't be using the red pill label to refer to myself, I will still talk about red pill subjects as they relate to dating, relationships, and gender dynamics because I find it fascinating. Before I go, I want to give a special thanks to all the people who reached out to me in support over the last week. The positive comments, the private messages, you guys know who you are. I read through absolutely all of them. They were wonderful, keeps me inspired, and really helps me stay enthusiastic for making this kind of content for people who are coming from the same perspective that I am. So thank you. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't like this video, please hit the thumbs down button because I really want to get a gauge of how many of those new people who came onto my channel have decided to stick around. Please leave a comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. If you're hearing the things I'm saying and you're like, yes, I hear you, I understand you, like we're on the same page, then please consider making a supportive pledge on Patreon. You know, support me in my greedy capitalist ways. Now, in all honesty, we've got an awesome community over there with like-minded people. I really enjoy the discussion. So if you want to be part of that, please come join us over in Patreon. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Now, let the flood of hate begin.